a lot of previous extensively was early on the code team was tied up doing a lot of preparation for the technology that we would need for the game. But I think particularly given a lot of this stuff was very abstract and very art driven, it was a lot easier to spend some time with an animator and an artist putting together a movie rather than sit down and go, well, I kind of want something like this, and then 3 or 4 weeks later seeing the end result and going, no, that's not exactly what I was describing. So I think previews will save you a hell of a lot of time, and your code team will appreciate it a whole lot more if you can actually give them concrete examples of rendering styles or particular techniques that you want to try out. Gameplay as well is really critical to previews, I think, and that was one of the things that saved us a hell of a lot in this process, was having very clear pre-visualization of all the gameplay elements that we wanted to play with.
So yeah, just in summary, after all the prevising, we ended up with this shortlist. We had constraints placed on us by design and hardware. The audience could be everyone, so we couldn't direct it towards anyone in particular. The cute, stylized characters can appeal to anyone. They don't appeal to everyone, but they can appeal to anyone. The UI was deliberately stylized. That gave us a load more of the graffiti flavor that we couldn't really put into the buildings at that time. And we wanted the whole thing to really have a look and feel that was stylish and elegant and all of its own. And the UI was developed primarily to really get that across. We did logos for the Inked Corporation and the Color Underground, and actually developed them like separate graphic design projects to make sure that everything was as slick and polished and cool as it could possibly be. And it all gives it a unifying theme, devoid of narrative. The visuals themselves all look as if they belong to the same entity. We used grey box level layout. So we had blocks created by the level designers. They would clip together the levels. This was very quick and inexpensive. And art for those boxes that they were clipping together could be done offline, and this allowed us to speed up production. So there's a look at some of the cool art that our graphic designer created for the interface stuff. Now these are style or mood pieces, and they don't indicate anything that's actually in the interface at all. They're just descriptions of style. And we would look at these and pore over how the colours are working and how the movement was working around the piece and the kind of emotions that it was getting across, and then we'd keep on, do another one, do another one.
I think also is an interesting battle internally was you start to get excited by having really no creative constraints, and you start to get involved in being very high concept and looking at all these styles for the interface, and then you have to have that moment of, well, what the hell does it actually mean or add up to? And I think that gets back to that thing of, one of the dangers in making any game, I think, is to get too excited about things that entertain you rather than thinking in the long term about ultimately what is the audience going to see and what is the player going to need in order to make this experience work.
That wasn't a dig at me, that was a thinly disguised threat.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
I must never get carried away like that.
That's right.
This was a great project to work on. As an artist, it was so much fun. It offered us huge amounts of freedom, and the ability to envisage an image for a game that doesn't rely on standard tropes was one in a million. Okay, so this is Inky because he's simple, because he's like a vinyl toy. He's very easy to reproduce. He is no geometry whatsoever, and he has virtually no texture. So we could put loads of them on screen. The Wii handles it beautifully. We can have them running around all over the place creating mayhem, real Keystone cops, and they look pretty cute. The buildings, as I said, were essentially cuboids. And because they were set to specific measurements, we knew how the character would jump on them, or whether the character couldn't jump on them, how to put them together, make a building fit together. We could make tiles for the road system, and everything would clip together really nicely. It's like Lego. Okay, over to you.
More. Okay, so the movie you saw was really kind of a moment to kind of bring THQ into, I guess, our world and say, hey, this is what we're thinking about. I know it looks a little bit weird, but trust us, we know what we're doing and where we're going. And so we kind of really had to move quickly, I think, to demonstrate, I guess, the potential of what the vision held. So throughout pre-production, we were putting together, I guess, the basic techniques for level design, the basic techniques for how the interface would work and what the skeleton structure of the game would be. We put together the first playable demo within 7 weeks of starting work on the game. So it was a kind of crude experience. We were going to bring it along and show it to you today, but I think there's enough to talk about without sort of embarrassing ourselves and showing you something that's 2 years old. But it was amazing to go back and have a look at it. So much of what we had in the original demo actually was preserved right through to the end of it. But significantly, I guess, early decisions we've made about the way that the camera would operate, the perspective that we were providing the player with, evolved constantly throughout the game. And camera being one of those things that everyone is an expert on and yet no one can ever get completely right, was definitely one of the real challenges for us making the game work. And some of the ideas I think particularly we had about the scale of the world, the scale of the character in the world, and how the inkies and blob and everything worked had to be continually revisited, didn't they, Terry?
Yes, they did.
That's an in-joke, but we'll explain it later. Okay, but I think the main thing that was imperative for all of us was to stick to the purity of the core design, of painting being the main focus for the player. 7 simple colours, worlds that came alive through the action of the player, and also to preserve, I think, which I think was the right decision at the time, was to make the game feel very arcadey, in that the levels were short and punchy. You were racing against a time limit, you were building up a score. Very simple gaming tropes that everyone can pick up and understand. And I think we then started to add more and more kind of artistic flair to the game to expand what we were doing. We had the patterns thrown in. We had, what else did we do? We started to play around with...
we got the shaders going on the buildings.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Lighting up stuff in the buildings.
The environment
all that stuff
really came alive within that period. So we took the game again to THQ and started showing people, and people were getting quite excited by this. It was a Wii title that showed quite a lot of promise. It had just the right amount of weeness to keep people engaged and didn't seem to be too crazy, but really there were still some ingredients missing, like who is this main character? How are we going to sell this idea to the rest of the world? I mean, you guys can put a pitch together and explain it to a bunch of people in a room, but it's another different proposition to talk to a marketing team and say, well, how do we sell something like this? It's new, where does it fit on the shelf? Who is going to play this game? And so you have to sort of, I guess, go through a whole lot of kind of, I guess, asking yourself difficult questions. Is how will this game work? Is there enough in the game to keep the player engaged and feeling rewarded? One of the things that was a big concern early on is that the game felt very short, that you could jump in and play a level within 10 to 15 minutes, and that didn't necessarily sort of fit well with kind of a full budget game going out as an original IP. I think people wanted to have some amazing, deep, 10-hour narrative journey through the world of Blob and meet all these sort of battles. So I guess we started looking at things that we could add to the world that would bring it alive. So we invented the whole color underground, the revolutionary movement that Blob was part of. We started to have missions embedded in the world because it felt very directionless, sort of jumping around the world and just painting. But I think critically the thing that came online, and we obviously had a lot of fun making this game, but I think it's rare that you have these moments in putting the game together. But you get this kind of rush and the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when the music came alive. And we had done a test with a bunch of musicians who the sort of rhythm section of the Bamboos, who are a kind of really cool Melbourne band. If you've never seen them before, then you should go out and check them out. And so we had the music working with the colours, and because I guess the initial feeling was that 7 colours is kind of boring, right? Why do I only have 7 colours? Where's pink is a question that we still get asked pretty much every week. And again, we wanted to stick to the purity of the design, not to make it ridiculously complex. But also I think the thing that really came out of adding the music to the colour was suddenly each colour was a variety of different instruments, and also was a variety of different musical samples. So you had this huge amount of kind of variation existing within a very simple set of orthogonal pieces. So it's like the gameplay suddenly developed this depth without becoming any more complex. And that was really a eureka moment for us. And at that point we thought, wow, this is something really fun. Now, how do we convince other people that it's really, really fun? So the missing puzzle was the Blob himself.